Hi guys, it's Miss Roden here with our library for the week. So today what we're going to talk about is pixels, and we're also going to read a book, a Caldecott award-winning book. So a pixel is a small, minute image or illumination on a screen, and those tiny, tiny dots, they look like tiny, tiny squares all over the screen is what, when you back up, you see that image or that picture. But if you were to zoom in, you'd see all these tiny little dots put together. That's what a pixel is. And you guys are going to learn what a pixel is through a little video of someone who really knows a lot about computer science who can tell you that, and also create some pixel art in the last part. So you see the picture of the watermelon that was right beside me with those little dots. Those colored dots is what made up that piece of artwork. Each small square would represent a picture, and you saw the watermelon once all those squares were put together. Well, in that slide, there's some math questions for you to answer, and every answer is a different color. And then at the end, you will see what you have created. So it's a really cool hidden picture art for you to do. And when you've done figuring out the picture, you can create your own little pictures there too by putting in the numbers. So this book is called Extra Yarn, and I chose it today because the yarn almost has dots. And it looks almost pixelated here. But this is a really cool Caldecott Honor Medal book by Mac Barnett. Extra Yarn. And I want to say thank you to HarperCollins Publishers for letting us read this book today online. Now, Caldecott books are known for their great pictures. That's what a Caldecott medal is for. It's because the pictures are unique and the illustrations are unique, and the author did something great to earn him or her a medal. On a cold afternoon in a cold little town, where everywhere you looked was either the white of snow or the black of soot from chimneys, Annabelle found a box filled with yarn of every color. Here's little Annabelle. So she went home and knit herself a sweater. And when Annabelle was done, she had some extra yarn. So she knit a sweater for Mars too, but there was still extra yarn. And when Annabelle and Mars went for a walk, Nate pointed and laughed and said, "You two look ridiculous." "You're just jealous," said Annabelle. "No, I'm not," said Nate. I think he might be. But it turned out he was. And even after she'd made a sweater for Nate and his dog and for herself and for Mars, she still had extra yarn. At school, Annabelle's classmates could not stop talking about her sweater. "Quiet," shouted Mr. Norman. "Quiet, everyone. Annabelle, that sweater of yours is a terrible distraction. I cannot teach with everyone turning around to look at you." "Then I'll knit one for everyone," Annabelle said, "so they won't have to turn around." "Impossible," said Mr. Norman. "You can't." There's something I want you to notice about these pictures. Now, remember when I said that Caldecott pictures, Caldecott books earn medals based on their pictures? Notice how everyone is either in black or gray, but the sweaters are in color. And she never runs out of yarn. I want you to think about that as we look through these pictures in the story. But it turned out she could, and she did, even for Mr. Norman. And when she was done, Annabelle still had extra yarn. So she knit sweaters for her mom and dad, and for Mr. Pendleton and Mrs. Pendleton, and for Dr. Palmer, and for little Louie. She made sweaters for everyone except Mr. Crabtree, who never wore sweaters or even long pants, and who would stand in his shorts with the snow up to his knees. "No sweater for me, thanks," said Mr. Crabtree. So she made Mr. Crabtree a hat, and even then Annabelle still had extra yarn. She made sweaters for all the dogs and all the cats and for other animals too. And soon people thought, soon Annabelle will run out of yarn. But it turned out she didn't. So Annabelle made sweaters for the things that didn't even wear sweaters. Like a mailbox, a house, or a birdhouse. Things began to change in that little town. It's not quite as boring. It's not quite as stiff. And it has a tiny bit of magic and imagination to it now, doesn't it? She didn't listen when people said she couldn't. She did. And now she's being able to color the town with her yarn. News spread of this remarkable girl who never ran out of yarn, and people came to visit from around the world to see all the sweaters and to shake Annabelle's hand. And one day an archduke who was very fond of clothes sailed across the sea and demanded to see Annabelle. "Little girl," said the archduke, "I would like to buy that miraculous box of yarn, and I'm willing to offer you $1 million. That would buy a lot of LOL dolls, Vale would say. "No, thank you," said Annabelle, who was knitting a sweater for a pickup truck. The archduke's mustache twitched. $2 million, he said. "That would buy a lot of Legos," Asher would say. Annabelle shook her head. "No, thanks." $10 million, shouted the archduke. "Take it or leave it." $10 million. "That would buy a lot of coffee," Miss Roden would say. "Leave it," said Annabelle. "I won't sell the yarn." And she didn't. So that night, the archduke hired 3 robbers to break into Annabelle's house. And they stole the box and took it to the archduke, who set off across the snow and sailed over the sea back to his castle. The archduke put on his favorite song and sat in his best chair, and then he took out the box and he lifted its lid and he looked inside. His mustache quivered. It shivered. It trembled. The archduke hurled the box out the window and shouted, "Little girl, I curse you with my family's curse. You will never be happy again." Because it's empty. It's like a magic yarn. But what's happening? He threw that box out, and it landed on a piece of ice. And that piece of ice is moving through that great big ocean. And there's someone waiting. It turned out she was And that is the end of that. So Annabelle did not want to hear Kent just because no one around her was. And she figured out a way to make something magical happen in her town, and people change and brought a little bit of color and excitement to their lives. So, what a fun little book this was. Extra yarn, Caldecott Honor Medal. That's what the silver medals are, the honor books. And if you see a gold, that's the winner. So every year there's one winner, every single year, a Caldecott winner. And there might be 2 to 3 honor books chosen each year. And those honor ones will have a little symbol here. Sometimes it'll be on the back to show you that it was an honor or a winner. So definitely look for these. And we have a special Caldecott section in our library. Bye guys. I'll see you next time.